speaking. Well, eventually he had to get up off his chair, and I would give you what's called Grant's famous speech, and the press hated it. Everybody else loved it, but he said it hundreds of times, and it's very short. I'm going to give it to you right now. So the crowd is yelling speech. Grant stands up. Everybody's quiet, listening to his very first words, and he says, "I stand to this occasion to say that I have nothing to say," and he'd sit back down. Oh, the press hated that. Now, the press would have to give something to their editor as to what Grant said. So, on the way back to their editor, these reporters would write these enormous speeches that I supposedly gave but never spoke a word of. A few days later, I pick up the paper and there was my speech. And I said, well, some of them were very good, and some of them not so great. Now, back then, they called that fake news. I don't know what they call it now. But but just getting back to the war here, even though events like this are not only educational um, and entertaining, we must not forget about the sacrifices this country made in 4 years from 1861 to 1865. Over 650,000 people lost their lives. In today's adjusted population, we're talking about 2.5 million people lost their lives in a 4 year time. Imagine that on the scale if it would happen today. Over almost 3 million people from both North and South joined the war effort. So that was a huge part of the population back then in the 1860s that were involved in the Civil War. Most definitely, if you lived back then, that you would have known somebody, perhaps many people not only served or lost their lives. Now, what you're going to see here today is no particular battle. I mean, we don't have the numbers to put thousands of people onto a battle and give you something authentic that Hollywood give you. But what we're going to see here today is probably like a little engagement skirmish. Now, something like this you're going to see today probably happened about 1,000 times during that 4 year period. When you have both enemies going through, let's say, Virginia, and if they were to cross each other's paths, well, they had a sworn duty to confront the enemy. And they would most likely engage them, which we're going to see here. Now, they could either engage them or not. A battle like this really had no importance or significance to the final outcome of the war. But their sworn duty, you see your enemy, you engage them, and so forth. So they would actually have to sometimes engage the enemy. Now, we don't have the numbers to even do what a skirmish would have looked like. But, you got to imagine we have cannon artillery guns way on the other side by the road there. But you got to imagine probably 50, 60 cannons on each side, which back then they call artillery guns. That's the technical name for it, but we call them cannons. So you had to have artillery guns, 60, probably 100 on each side. You would have hundreds of horses. Your infantrymen, who are your foot soldiers, they're the ones doing the marching. You could have thousands and thousands of them out there. So you got to imagine a much grander scale as to what you're going to see here. And we're going to begin in just a moment. Now, on the right-hand side here, along the wood line, you can see a small company of infantry, Union infantry. Remember, Union is blue, Confederate is gray, or sometimes a butternut. Blue has always been the color of the Union Army. Gray was adapted for the Confederates because it was the color of the Virginia militia at the time in the late 1850s. When the wars broke out, the Virginia militia actually had more people in their army than the United States Army. So they were far outnumbered, far better trained. Most of the people in 1860, 1861 that were Union soldiers, they never even fought a musket. They would be garrison duty and so forth, but they never saw any battle. Whereas the well-trained Virginia militia, the Confederates, which eventually become, were much better trained. You've got to remember the North came where they didn't have to do their own hunting. They had stores, butchers, etc. Much more population, industrial revolution up there. So they didn't actually have to go out in the woods and shoot their dinner. Whereas people in the South had to do that because it was rural. So they knew how to handle a weapon right off from the start, much better than any northerner would have been able to do. It's either coming straight out there. Now, a company like that